when we go on the road against the crowd and against the odds when people didn't think we had much chance. It started in 1962 with Dean Coyle Moore. Dean Moore challenged the team to go to the University of Georgia, to go win up at Georgia when nobody thought we had a chance. The Seminoles defeated Georgia 18-0. They brought him back a little bit of sod from Georgia, and he said, let's bury it, and let's remember that when we go on the road against the crowd and against the odds, we've got a great chance to win. Well, 98 sod wins later and 53 seasons later, the cemetery has become one of the great traditions in college football, and we're glad it's Florida State's. Today we want to thank a few people in athletics: Stan Wilcox, Monk Bonassort, Rob Wilson, Bernie Waxman helped make this go every week, and we appreciate their help. Jim Hunt does our social media, Randy and Melinda Allen do the audio, and my wife Cricket makes these flowers each week, so thank them. Also thank the ladies of the Extra Point Club. They are here every Thursday night making sure our cemetery is good. There's one right there. That's there for the EPC. You know, I want to try something a little different. Some of you got a little gray hair. Remember that for the first 25 years of Florida State athletics, we had a cheer that nobody else did. But I hadn't heard it in 40 years, so just on a lark here, we're going to try. It was called FSU One Time. Some of you kind of remember that? Now here's how it goes. I call out FSU one time, and you just cheer. And we do it 2 times, 3 times, and then all the damn time, okay? So we're going to just try. It's for fun right now, all right? You ready? Are your lungs ready? All right, it goes like this. FSU one time. FSU 2 times. FSU 3 times. FSU all the damn time. I don't think anybody's done that in 40 years. And so if you're in the stands, you've had a couple of tall ones, you can just stand up and do that. And anyway, we used to have a lot of fun with it. The cemetery is about legendary wins, and they wouldn't have happened without some really legendary players. Well, we've got 2 of the really great ones in Florida State's history. We had a history of a great passing game, but you wouldn't have had a great passing game without great players, and 2 of our very best players are here today. Our first guest is from Miami, Florida. He was a sprinter and a hurdler and a football player in high school, and he decided to come to Florida State. He teamed up with Gary Huff, and by the time he had left, he had caught more single season and more career touchdown passes than anybody ever at Florida State, and those records lasted for 23 and 26 years. He's a Florida State Athletics Hall of Famer. He was a first-round draft pick of the Green Bay Packers, played with the Packers, and also the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. From Miami.
Don't ask, just drink.
I'm supposed to be recording this for your dad.
Too. When you get a chance sometime, if you go to the Seminole Soccer or Softball Complex, that complex is named after Barry and his wife Mary Ann, who've been 2 of our very best donors, and we appreciate their help. Our next legend came to us, and his nickname was Jingle Joints. He came from Jacksonville Paxson High School with his teammate, the late, great Gary Padgett, and by the time he had left here, he was a 2-time consensus All-American. And listen to this next line. He caught passes for more yardage than anyone who had ever played college football. He's a member of the College Football Hall of Fame, a first-round draft pick of the Patriots, then played with the Cowboys and the Miami Dolphins. No one else wears number 34 for Florida State, but it was Ron Sellers.
No, I need like your support when I do.
Oh. Hey, Barry B. Smith, it's your time. Barry, hold the mic. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. Barry's never had a problem talking. Never. So Barry, you You were an awfully good high school player, but you had a lot of choices. You were a good member.
It didn't help me. It didn't help me. I still
Here. Without making a real long story, there's two guys that I followed a lot. I love watching them play, hear about them play. One of them, of course, was Fred Biletnikoff, which to me is one of the greatest wide receivers ever. And then this kid right next to me, Jingle Joints, number 34, loved watching him. I went to a high school that we pretty much ran the ball. We didn't win very much. We didn't throw much. But I was lucky. I was fast. I was a high hurdle state champion. I was recruited by a lot of different universities. And when I got a chance to make a decision, I wanted to come to Florida State because I wanted to follow in the footsteps of Biletnikoff and Sellers, because I felt if I could be the best I could be, it's going to be right here, nowhere else, and it worked out very well. I love Florida State University.
Now, Barry, when you got here, you got an eye for talent, and you saw a guy named Gary Huff, and you two made a lot of music together on the field. What was the combination with Huff that made it work so well?
Well, he should have been, to me, the starting quarterback. Our sophomore year in 1970, we had a couple other quarterbacks that he had to work his way up. But the big difference between the other guys, he was so incredibly strong. He was a shortstop, played third base in baseball. He was very strong, and he was a student of the game. And he did more homework than anybody else. He looked at more film than anybody else. And one thing I loved about him is that he just threw the ball to me a lot. and one of the neat things that we had were that we changed a lot of plays at the line of scrimmage, which I'm sure Ron did too, with the quarterbacks he had. But Gary and I, we ran together, we worked together, we partied together, and we were kind of a yin and yang type thing. And to me, he's still the best quarterback that's ever come through this place. But that's my opinion.
Barry, let me ask you this. You also played, and this is pretty unusual, you played receiver with 3 other NFL receivers on the same team, Red Dawson, Kent Gatos, and tight end Gary Parris. And you caught a lot of passes even though those guys were there. What was it like playing with 3 other receivers at the same time?
Well, up until recently, Gary Parris, who was a freshman with me, we came in together in '69, was an outstanding tight end and had one heck of a career at the next level. But the 2 guys are very close to Red Dawson, we used to call him Chigger, and then Kent Gatos, which we called him Pondbird because he was so tall, kind of Ron Sellers type as far as the height was concerned. One of them, Kent, went on with the Raiders, and Dawson went on with the Oakland, with the Houston Oilers. We, and especially in 1971, to me, it's my probably the most fun I ever had, because the 4 of us, we just worked together. It was all about winning games. It was all about how we could work together. And it was the first year, if you remember, 1971, that we played at the inaugural Fiesta Bowl. And it was big stuff back then, because back then we didn't have 38 bowl games. So to get a chance to go to the Fiesta Bowl, and in that Fiesta Bowl, we set an NCAA record because we were the first group, the first university, to have 3 wide receivers to catch over 100 yards apiece on the same team in the same game, which was pretty cool. Now, it was good. Great guys, dear friends.
Barry, let me ask you this. Tonight, we'll see number 80, Rashad Green for Florida State. What do you think about number 80?
He has made his mark, as far as I'm concerned, from one wide receiver to another. He's a student of the game. He runs great routes. He knows how to get open. He doesn't get rattled. He has, what I say, cojones. He's not afraid to get hit, come across the middle. And more importantly, he's a game breaker. When the going gets tight, you know who number 5 is going to be looking at, because he makes things happen. He's been here, almost 4 years. He will in a few more games, and he's done a great job. And I'm proud that he's one of us. A great wide receiver.
Let me ask you this, quite simply. What's it meant to you to be a Seminole?
Oh, well. People that know me, I'm a very passionate individual. I love Florida State University. To be the Garnet and Gold, it courses through my veins. I love giving back. I love supporting everything about Florida State University, not just the athletics, but the academics. I'm very proud to be part of this university now and look back at where it was back when I came here in 1969 and see what all of us have created. It's not just about one or two. We've all created the Seminole Nation, and by God, I hope it keeps for another 100 years.
Thank you, Barry. The guy to my right, nobody else wears 34. He came here with Gary Padgett. I don't know if they came as a pair, but we were glad to get both of them. He's also a basketball player. Ron, let me ask you, what brought you to Florida State?
Watching Fred Biletnikoff play my senior year, FSU invited our whole team from Jacksonville over for the FSU-Kentucky game. Kentucky was the 5th-ranked team in the country, and we knew that FSU was going to give them a good game, but we were not expecting FSU to beat them. And so I was sitting in the stands with my teammates, but specifically right next to Gary Padgett, and we saw Fred Biletnikoff put on a show where FSU won like 45-7 against the 5th-ranked team in the country. And I turned to Gary, I said, Gary, they play football like we do at high school, but this is the way we want to play at the next level. Why don't we come here? And Gary said, Ron, I'm going wherever you want to go. So that's what we did.
Ron, let's talk about a couple of games. You had a pretty darn good career. I remember one. I think I was about 11 years old, and Daddy and Mama took us to Birmingham, Alabama. Well, that's not too much younger. All right. You were only 12. All right. So Florida State, we had lost at Houston. I think we tied NC State. We were 0-1-1. And we had to go play Big Bad Alabama at Legion Field, led by a coach named Bear Bryant. And we didn't have a chance. Nobody thought we had a chance at all, except a couple of guys in Garnet and Gold, maybe about 65 of them. And Florida State ended up with what I think probably was at that time certainly the greatest tie in our history. We tied Alabama 37-37 in a tremendous game. Tell us what you remember about Bear Bryant and that game.
That game, first place, I want to help your memory. We were 0-1. We were not 0-1-1. We had just lost to Houston at Houston. Then we played Alabama and Birmingham, and they were 24-point favorites over us. They were the #1 team in the country, hadn't played a game yet. But their defense had 10 starters back, and they had only given up 36 points the whole season the year before in 10 games. And we put up 37 points against them, and that's where Coach Bear Bryant said on national television, they were filming him, he said, what the hell's going on out here? And I had a pretty good game, and as a matter of fact, in December of that year, Bear Bryant and I happened to be on the driving range in Tallahassee here because of the Tallahassee Open, and he walked over to me, he says, are you Ron Sellers? I said, yes, sir. And he said, I just want to shake your hands because not one of my defensive backs got this close to you this whole last year. And what I will tell you is I've had about 5,000 people tell me they were listening to our game on the radio. But that night, we flew back. It was a night game. We flew back. We got here about 10:30 in the Tallahassee, and rush was going on. It was canceled. And it was on the front page of the Tallahassee Democrat the next morning of the airport. We had over 10,000 people here at the Tallahassee airport that night waiting for us.
Let me ask you about another one. We had not yet won in 1967. The Big Bad Gators had come up here to play. You guys, the game before had beat them except for a referee in the corner right over there in '66. And we went down to Gainesville, and of course they thought we had no chance. And in the first quarter, your quarterback, your friend Kim Hammond, got knocked out. He got a concussion, and I think we had different concussion rules at that time. But by the beginning of the fourth quarter, that concussion had evidently ended. And so Kim came back from having been knocked out, came back on the field. We were just ahead by a couple of points, I think, but it wasn't looking good. And all of a sudden, Kim hooked up with you, and you kind of take it from there.
Well, to start, it was the last game of the season for both of us, and the winner was going to go to the Gator Bowl to play against Penn State, who was the fourth and fifth ranked team in the country. They had an All-American tight end named Ted Kwolek, and it was like Joe Paterno's first year. And so Kim got knocked out, and then late in the fourth quarter, they were driving for the winning score, and they fumbled the ball. We recovered on like our own 4-yard line, and Kim Hammond all of a sudden comes in to the game. Now at halftime, he did not know who I was or anybody on the team was, and we sure as heck knew he was not coming back into the game. But here he comes back into the game, and he calls a play for me, and I caught about a 55-yarder out to about the 40-something yard line of the Gators. The next play, we lost 3 yards, and the next play, I scored a touchdown. So that sealed the game and the victory for us, and it was very sweet to be part of the team, to be the first team to beat the Gators in Gainesville. It was a pretty sweet night that night.
Ron, let me ask you also, we won the right to go to the Gator Bowl. I remember it was a cold day. We had Penn State. That was a big power, certainly. Joe Paterno. We had Bill Peterson and you and Kim and Larry Green and a few others. We were down 17-0, as I recall, in that game. And it turned out much better. What do you remember about the 1967 Gator Bowl?
I can honestly say the first thing that comes to mind always with that is the first and only game I remember in college where I dropped a pass. I dropped a pass, and it was the first play of the game, and it was a quick out to me, and I dropped it, and Kim threw me a perfect pass. I went on to catch 14 passes that game, and but at halftime we're behind 17-0, and coming out in the second half, Penn State has the ball on their own 26-yard line, 4th down and 1, and Joe Paterno decides to go for it. Why, I don't know, but thank goodness he did. They did not make it, and like the first play, Kim Hammond threw me about a 24-yard touchdown, and we went on to tie them 17-17. It was a huge victory, but 2 teams that we tied that year was Alabama, who they were the Southeastern Conference champions. We also beat Texas A&M that year, who was the Southwestern Conference champions, and we beat Penn State, who was the Big East champions. So we had a great team in 1967.
Now, Ron, you went on, you had a great NFL career. He must have gained 7 or 8 pounds, and he became big enough for the NFL to tear them up. You played, very few people played for Tom Landry and Don Shula. What was it like to play with 2 of the greatest of all time?
I can't hear you.
Thanks, Doug. I was fortunate. I was drafted #1 by the Patriots, and then I was traded to the Dallas Cowboys, who had just won their Super Bowl, and I knew I had to play pretty good to make it. So anyway, Tom Landry and was absolutely incredible coach. I loved playing for them, and I was their leading receiver that year. I was on the team, and then I caught the winning touchdown in a playoff game against the 49ers with about 25 seconds to go in the game from Roger Staubach. Then Don Shula, we were Super Bowl champions. The next year I got traded to Miami Dolphins, and we won the Super Bowl. And Don Shula was also so different than Tom Landry, but they both had one thing in common. They knew how to win big games and win championships.
Ron, we're on a 24-game winning streak. Pretty neat little quarterback from Alabama has done awfully well. Tell us, you've played with some of the greatest quarterbacks. What's your thoughts when you see number 5 on the field for Florida State?
Well, I have always said that if you don't have a great receiver, you can't be a great quarterback. And I can tell you that Barry and I were fortunate enough to make a lot of quarterbacks look really good. And just look at the receivers that number 5 has, and guess what? He should be All-American all the time with those receivers. But, you know, in another vein, I would tell you the throws that he's made is absolutely incredible. 15 of 16 against Notre Dame in the second half. Is that awesome or what? So we want to see some of the same thing tonight, and I will tell you that Barry Smith is one of the nicest gentlemen you'll ever meet, and he has a heart of gold, and he was one of the greatest receivers in FSU history.
Folks, thanks for coming. 2 weeks from today, I'm going to call it the local show. Some of you remember a coach named Bobby Bowden, right? Well, when he first got here, he had what he called the two-headed quarterback. So anyway, our guest for Boston College will be that quarterback, Wally Woodham and Jimmy Jordan, and their receiver, Kurt Unglaub. So we'll have a good time with Boston College. Thanks for coming to Sod Talk. We'll see you soon.